So, got a little bit of an update video for you guys tonight. I've been working on the car quite a bit over the last week or so, and so here's the car again. I ended up pulling out the rear end, and while I had the rear end out, I also pulled out the gas tank. Plan on probably, I don't know if I'm going to run some aftermarket control arms or if I'm just going to box these ones, but it'll also be getting something to do with the control arms and some aftermarket shocks. And then you can see the welders sitting out here. My dad's actually been working on the floor pans, so he's got the big spot done in the rear footwell, and then up under here under the driver's side he's got some pieces in here that are ready to be kind of massaged into a final spot and then welded. And then we've got a spot right back there and a little hole right up there that have still got to get patched. But then after that, we should be ready to throw the carpet back in and get those seats put in it. Over here, got this is the original rear end out of the car. That's the 7.5 inch 10 bolt rear end that comes in all these Camaros. Notoriously they kind of suck, but this is the new rear end that I got. This is a 2000, I think it was a 5 or 6 Ranger, 8.8 Ford, it's known to be really a robust rear end. It's kind of like the poor man's 9-inch. So I got these sandblasted, and basically what's going to happen is both this axle and that axle are both going to be cut right along here on the around the differential in the center, and these tubes are just going to go away, and then this is going to get sleeved, and then the 10 bolt axle tubes are going to be welded onto this center section. So basically we're going to have all of the stock like the coil or the coil spring perch and the shock mount, control arm mount, and then the stock, like the backing plate for the brakes and everything, is all going to be the same, and it allows you to use everything as it was before, but with the stronger center section. Now this is what it's going to look like when it's done. As you can see on this center section, it's got 2 holes right here. These are for the torque arm mount, and as you can see, those aren't on this center section. So this is called a Hiltsy mount that I got. Guy did a lot of these back in the day, but this is a bracket that gets welded onto the 8.8 that allows you to, it basically creates those 2 holes that allow you to mount the torque arm to the 8.8. And then this is what it should look like when it's all done. This is the 8.8 center section, and then this is where it gets welded and sleeved with the 10 bolt axle, and here's the Hiltsy mount welded onto the 8.8. Now the reason I chose, most guys choose the Explorer 8.8 because it comes with 31 spline axles, which are more durable, I guess you could say, than the 28 spline that comes in the Ranger. The reason that I chose that is because these are the axle shafts out of both rear ends. These 2 are for the 10 bolt, these 2 are for the 8.8, and as you can see, they're different sizes, how the Rangers and Explorers are. But these are 26 spline that come in the 82 Camaro that I've got. If you get the later years of Camaros came with 28 spline axles, which is what the Ranger has, and as long as the tubes are welded on and the new axle is the same overall length as the stock axle, you can use those 90 to 92 axle shafts and they'll slide right into the 28 spline center section. You can do, a lot of guys do the 31 spline, but it's a lot more expensive for the aftermarket axle shafts to get them to work with the 31 spline center section and still have the stock bolt pattern for the Camaro. One other thing that I forgot to mention here that says in the instructions, this stock oil fill plug right here if you look at this picture where the Hiltsy mount is welded on, it will be like right behind this plate, and it's going to be covered up. So that plug is going to have to be relocated over to this side of the case somewhere. You'd have to drill and tap somewhere in here so that you still have an oil fill, and you got to make sure it's in the right spot up and down so that you're not overfilling or underfilling the differential. An idea that I had was putting it somewhere on the cover back here. That's kind of how most trucks are. They just have a rubber plug that goes into a hole, and it seems to be fine on a lot of other trucks, so I'll maybe try that and see how it works first before I just go drilling into the case. But other than that, it's probably going to be about a week until I get these back. There's a guy down in the Fox Valley that's going to be welding these for me. He's built like 6 or 8 of these in the past, and he's pretty experienced with it, the whole process. This is a cast iron differential, or differential housing, and it has to be preheated and heated while you're welding it and heated afterwards to prevent the metal from getting brittle. And you have to weld it with a special type of wire. I'm pretty comfortable with welding, but that's a little bit over the top for me. So I'm just gonna have it taken down to him, or I'm gonna take them down to him and make sure it's done right and I don't mess it up somehow then. But other than that, I will begin to pick this video up again when I get them back. Thanks. So as you can see in that picture, that's exactly how it looked when I picked it up from the fab guy. I actually got the axle put back in now, and it's painted. I painted it with POR 15. It's a rust inhibitor, so it should never rust again. I did end up going with UMI Performance Panhard bar and lower control arms on both sides, just because I didn't want to mess around with the stock stuff. But basically everything went right back together because I did keep it stock width. And since I used the 10-bolt tubes, all of the basically like coils and shock mounts and control arms mounts, everything's back in the same exact spot as it was before. So everything went back in. I just got the Ford 8.8 center section now. I did end up using the stock 90 to 92 28 spline axle shafts, and they went in perfectly. I decided to keep the 10-bolt drum brakes for now just because I ordered them all brand new off Rock Auto, and they were just dirt cheap. Eventually I'll plan on putting a disc brake conversion in the rear here. Also, I did not end up putting the hole in the differential cover. I just decided to fill it up on top. There was a little speed sensor or ABS sensor or something that the Ford Ranger used, and I just basically took that out and filled it up from the top with I think it was like 2 or 3 quarts of gear lube. And then if you see back here, you can see right where this was welded. So right along here, this is the original 8.8 tube, and then it was welded to the 10-bolt tube. So this is all 10-bolt tube on the outside. That's why I was able to keep all the stock brackets and everything in the same location. Same thing on this side. It's welded right there, and then this is the stock 8.8 tube. This is the 10-bolt tube. Now, this now has the Hiltsy mount welded onto it. As you can see here, I kind of got the torque arm bracket. Started sliding that on to bolt the torque arm up, but I said I'd film this video first. But as you can see in the picture too, this is basically welded onto the 8.8 housing and allows you to mount this bracket. I'm using the PA Racing torque arm with this bracket, and then it also using the PA Racing transmission mount for my 4L80E. That went in pretty smooth, fits pretty well. A little bit tight right over here where the transmission's almost touching the mount, but other than that, everything bolted right up with that. And then this right here is where the torque arm from the rear end bolts onto, and that basically just keeps the rear end from twisting like this under heavy load. One more thing about this PA Racing trans cross member is, if you notice here, this is the transmission mount. So this is a stock mount, and it utilizes the center. This mount uses the center hole for that. There's also a different mount that you can get that's also a factory mount. It's just a little different style where it's got 2 bolts that go in here. And PA Racing also threw in it's basically a drive shaft hoop that goes around the drive shaft right here. So it's got a bracket that comes off here, and then there's a big hoop that would go around the drive shaft. And that's just to keep it from, if it flies apart, it keeps it from banging up the bottom of the car, and basically just holds on to the drive shaft. So I ordered the mount for this. I'm still waiting on it, but once I get that, it'll use these 2 bolts, and then that bracket that the drive shaft hoop bolts on will bolt right onto it. And that also clears the torque arm here too. You can notice that I got these Speed Engineering headers put on. They fit perfectly. I didn't have to mash them anywhere to bend them in to get them to fit. They slid right in. I put them in from the bottom, just jacked the car up a little bit. Now, this is a little tight to the shifter linkage right here. I'm gonna have to modify that a little bit. I don't know if I'm gonna end up twisting that up or ending up bending it in, or maybe weld some kind of a bracket on here to get it a little closer to the pan. And then I just kind of got this pushed up in there right now. That's the shifter bracket. But other than that, I got -6 AN transmission cooler lines. I just have those looped right now because I haven't got around to running off to the cooler yet. Other than that though, this connector right here is what controls the transmission. You can see that I did have to massage that a little bit with the air hammer to get that to be able to plug in. But other than that, the exhaust should be able to route right through here along the outside of this and go out the back. So I don't really have a plan for the exhaust yet, but that's how it should be able to go. I plan on just running it into a Y pipe. It should come together somewhere right out here and go single pipe out the back, and then probably keep it like the factory style and get a MagnaFlow muffler that will have one entry on this side, and then it'll also have an exit on this side to go out this side and then out that side in the back. So it's basically just a stock setup. So it's a dual, it's got 2 ports on this side and a single port on this side of the muffler. One goes out here, one goes in on this side and out on that same side and goes out the back. Also notice that before I did put the rear end in, I got the gas tank back in. This is the stock 3rd gen out of my 82 Camaro. So it's a steel tank, and my car was originally a carb, so I ended up having to get a sending unit from a fuel injection Camaro for a 3rd gen. I think I got one from a 87 or 88, something like that. But it has to be the fuel injection one because it's got the little basket that the fuel pump bolts onto. Oh, it doesn't bolt onto it. I got a clamp holding it on there. But basically, this is the feed line, and this sending unit is stainless steel. I had to take this into a local hydraulic shop and get this fitting. The end flared so the fitting would work with the -6 AN hose. But that's the feed. This is the return, and then this is the vent. So I just got those hose clamped because they are not high pressure. This is the only one that's really high pressure. The return and the vent don't need to be high pressure. So those are just regular fuel injection rubber hose, and this is the braided steel -6 AN line. I also cut the fuel door in the floor because if I do ever take this on power tour or any long trips or something, I don't want to get stranded with a bad fuel pump and have to end up lowering the rear end and everything to get it out. So if I'm in the middle of BFE and have to change the fuel pump in here, I'll just be able to open up the door and the sending unit is right here. I'll be able to pull it out and replace the pump. Other than that, I've got 12 gauge wiring for, it's a Walbro 255, and I got 12 gauge wire coming back here for the power. Is this wire, the gray one, and then the black is this ground, and then the purple is the sending unit. So I have that hooked up to the stock 82 sending unit wire, and it works perfectly. There's a plug underneath here, back behind the wheel, that plugs back into. So I just spliced that wire from the factory sending unit plug into the sending unit wire for this,
And like I said, gray is power and black is ground. So from underneath this black line right here, it's actually black stainless braided line, -6AN, coming down here, and I'm using a Corvette fuel filter because it serves also as a regulator, so it regulates to what the LS engines need for fuel pressure. This is my rubber return line that goes right back up to the top to the sending unit, and then you can see here's the wiring. That's the stock sending unit wiring for the gas gauge. And that comes back over here, and then that plug right there is for the stock sending unit signal. So that red wire is placed into the purple wire up top, and that allows the fuel gauge to work. Also using the stock vent for the tank. I still got to get that mounted up there. This is also the stock brake lines. I just kind of robbed the bolt for the fuel filter at the moment. But then coming out the bottom of the fuel filter is also -6AN. This is a metal fitting, and then it comes down to the braided stainless steel line. So basically what happens here is the pump puts out as much pressure as it possibly can, and then this filters the fuel, and it also regulates it down to 60 psi. And then all the additional pressure bleeds off this line back into the tank with all the additional gas. So this line runs, I've got it down to here, and then I'm using the factory 3rd gen hard line, and I've got a fitting on here connecting that to the braided stainless steel line. And then that runs along the factory location all the way up to right alongside the transmission. That's another fitting where it turns back into the braided stainless steel line, and then that goes up to the engine. Got that routed up along the, you can see it right there, comes up along the bell housing and goes right to the fuel rail. So I got a little wiring and shit to clean up here yet, but other than that, that is an overview on the fuel system. And like I said, that filter keeps this at 60 psi, which is what the LS engines need to run.